Thank you, Christine. Good morning, everybody. And may I say what a great joy it is to be in the very heart of England. And with everything that's going on, the news of the new defence deal, which secures thousands of jobs for Rolls-Royce, the news that Derby Cathedral will host one of the 3 coronation screens for the East Midlands. I feel I've arrived where everything's happening, in this very heart of England, and all we need now is for Derby County to win every match for the rest of the season and get promoted. Well, anything can happen. You heard, have confidence, we were told. So it's lovely to be with you all, and thank you, Libby, for your invitation. A brief word about me. Well, I was born and brought up in Edinburgh, so for me, Derby's a way down south, by the way. Went to Trinity College Dublin, joined Lloyds Bank as a graduate, and worked there for 32 years, ending up in 6 managing director roles. I decided I wanted to do other things and took early retirement in 2005. I need to stress this. 1, I took early retirement, so I wasn't kicked out. And 2, it was 2005, but it was all right when I left at the place. All went wrong after that, really. And it was very good, actually. When I told them I was going to pack in, they sent me off on a pre-retirement course to Eastbourne, which felt very fitting, being the Zimmer capital of the country. And we had this instructor who was telling us all about different things, how about to manage our money, how to cope with our pensions, how to develop hobbies, how to rediscover our partners. Not sure she wanted that bit. And they even taught us about our funerals. Bankers, we were told, should not be cremated but be buried, and what is more, be buried not a depth of 6 feet but a depth of 24 feet. And I was fascinated. And I went up to her and said, excuse me, I said, but why is it that we should not be cremated but be buried, and buried at a depth not of 6 feet but of 24 feet? Why, she said, because deep down, bankers are very nice people. And along the way, I lost my eyesight, actually. I was at Harvard Business School in the 1980s, came back from there having done masses of reading every night, and realized that my eyesight, which had never been good, was deteriorating. I was told in 1987 that I would develop tunnel vision by my 50s, but in fact I was registered blind in 1990. And when you heard earlier in those prayers about confidence, what I had was faith. How could you ever do that? You know, I had a lovely, lovely wife who's been my rock all the way through, 3 young children, financial obligations, a significant job, and I was the area director for West London. I was the youngest area director in the bank, I suppose. And there I am. But all the way through, consider the lilies of the field. They toil not, neither do they spin. Yet Solomon in all his glory. I had the confidence in Jesus, because this isn't about money this morning. This is about how we use money to take Jesus to more people. And I had confidence in my fellow humans that I would trust them to help me through all that was going on. And that confidence and trust has never been misplaced. My personnel director, when I went to see him, and to check that my career was still on track, told me, John, we still think you're very good, but we can't promote you, can we? I said, why not? He said, because you can't see people, so you can't manage them. Why is that? I said, because managing people is looking people in the eye, and clearly you cannot do that. And I said to him, you know, it's a strange thing, but I can still hear. That's beginning to go as well now. Anyway, I can still hear. And most people have mouths from which sound comes. And most people have eyes a couple of inches above their mouth. And I reckon if I can work out where their mouth is, their eyes won't be far apart. And as I say, I went on to be the managing director, and it was a great pleasure when I was able to help him into early retirement. In terms of the church, I started off actually in the United Free Church of Scotland, which was the local church near us. But then my mother, who was English, took me down to the Episcopal Church, which I joined. So I did the Episcopal Church in Scotland, the Church of Ireland while I was in Dublin, and then into the Anglican. So I feel I'm a little bit of an Anglican communion on my own. I've always had money there, so I was parish treasurer up in Newcastle when we lived there, and got involved at Chelsea Cathedral, a parish cathedral like here, where we go to church, and I was their finance chairman for yonks. The bishop got me to be DBF chair. Somebody else persuaded me to reply to a newspaper advert to become a church commissioner. And I say this, because I never meant to do all this. I'm just a wee lad from the pews. And having been church commissioner for 9 years, I thought I'd done my bit for the church, and I was looking forward to packing in 2013. And people started tapping at my shoulder and saying, we need a new finance chair for the Archbishop's Council. And I said, no, I'm committed to doing other things. I just agreed to stand to be a member of Essex County Council. I thought, I'm not going to do anything else as well. But I went to a dinner. By then I was a trustee at St Paul's Cathedral Foundation. I went to dinner, sat next to the wife of the dean, a lady called Hilary, herself a priest. And she started talking about lay vacations. And I said, well, how do you define lay vacation? And she said, lay vacation is when you know in your head and your heart that the role ahead is the best one for you, that you can do this as well as anyone else. And I went home and talked to my beloved Yvonne, and she agreed, and I put my name forward to be finance chairman. And having been selected, I asked to go and see Archbishop Justin, and I said, look, if you want a finance chairman who's here to balance the books in a church that's been in decline for 40 years, that has been aging for 40 years, that is relying ever more on a declining number of people to give more and more money, I'm not your man. But if we're happy to be radical, to think about the things we can do to reverse a decades-long trend, I'll walk with you every step of the way. And so in 2013, I agreed to do this for 5 years, and here I still am. And the wonderful news is that by law, they cannot extend me after the 30th of September this year. Hooray, so to be bad. But it's been a wonderful 10 years. Because the first thing we did was we came round every diocese and asked you what you wanted. And the answer was universal. We want to grow. We're not sure we know how to do it. We really will need to get more priests at the heart of all this. And we need to get younger priests who can really set their laity on fire because they can't do it all themselves. And so you transfer the burdens from the priesthood much more into the laity because they can then move with a pace and a multiplication otherwise impossible. And so straight away we started firstly with actually developing the leadership of the church. When I took over, the budget per bishop training per annum was £900. Absolutely ridiculous. We created a multi-million fund so that we could really develop our bishops, our deans, the leaders of tomorrow, and that has proven to be very useful over the years. We started how we could increase the number of ordinands by 50% because we'd worked out that's what we needed to do given the pattern of retirement. And by 2019, we had more ordinands going through than at any time in the last 50 years. You did this, it isn't me. All we did was provide the funding to enable people to do things. And it's been knocked by COVID, of course, and the numbers have gone back down, partly also because of a new discernment process. But it is very clear that the change in the configuration of the priesthood to a much more diverse group, where we have still older people coming into the priesthood, maybe actually now need some more of them, but we have far more of people under 30, far more younger women, far more ethnicity to reflect the communities we serve. That has all worked, and it's just wonderful. If we're going to be a younger church, we need a priesthood that reflects that. If you ask me, I think the area where we've made least progress is in a national approach to lay training and development, lay leadership training and development, and that is a cultural piece that's proved quite hard to knock down, I would say to you, in all honesty. But we've done it. On the digital side, Clearly, if you are going to respond to young people, you need the mixed ecology. You need to be able to respond in the ways that they wish to deal with you. I continue to have the ambition that every one of the 600,000 children who at any time are in a Church of England primary school will leave with an app on their phone which enables them to stay in touch with Jesus when they go to a secular secondary. Still an ambition, but by golly, what we've achieved in the digital side. All the work that went on stood us in such good stead when COVID came along, because over a quarter of all parishes have now, nearly a half, have undertaken training in how to do online ministry. And now we've got all the online giving training going on as well. When it came along, we had Thy Kingdom Come, all the different digital-based programs. A church near you accessed this Christmas millions of times by people wondering what service they might go to in different places. And during lockdown, of course, the daily service. I still, every morning, can turn on the Church of England on Alexa and ask her for the prayer for today. It's only 30 seconds, but it's always just a few words to help you through a busy day. I had the great privilege of being asked to attend the 2018 National Digital Awards. And when the Church of England, and we were up against people like Sainsbury's and Tesco's and all the main national retailers and delivery companies and so on. And when we won our first award, the Channel 4 comedian who was presenting expressed surprise. When we won the 4th award of the 4 classes we had entered, so we won the gold in every category, I think he was reduced to merely noting that the Church of England appeared to be more prevalent than at any time since Henry VIII had banished the Catholics. And then we won the 5th award that we hadn't entered, because the industry voted us, the Church of England, as having the best internal digital capability of any organisation, beating all of those organisations, Argus and all the rest of them. And in 2022, it happened again. Always understand, this is not anybody in Church House doing, well, it is that one in Church House. This is about making money available for intentional investment. We'll always be driven by the Holy Spirit, but even the Holy Spirit can make more progress when we ensure that the resources are properly aligned. So the other thing we did way back then was to look at the Darlow formula, a subsidy which had been provided into the church using the funds from the church commissioners over the decades. It was fine when it was started, but given the way the pattern of church decline had continued, it was merely subsidizing decline. In fact, if a diocese improved its financial position and its worshipping numbers, it would be penalized by losing that subsidy. It was no longer fit for purpose, and so we went to General Synod in 2015, and they agreed that we should move away from that into a program of intentional investment. And I understand that that creates tensions. When you've been used to spreading the jam thinly over every bit of the slice of bread, and now you're going to concentrate that jam only on part of it, it feels very hard for those of us who are left bare. I get that. But look at the results. We dedicated half of the annual flow of money to low-income communities. So this money goes in, according to a formula designed by Sir Andrew Dilnot of the Statistics Agency, and basically it goes to those dioceses where deprivation is a relatively large part of the overall diocese piece. And then the other half are Strategic Development Fund projects. And over the last 6 years, from 17 to 22, we've funded £226 million of projects. From Carlisle, who identified they hardly had any young people in the church in churches in their diocese other than the children of clergy, and they created Jesus in the Park, and they now have their diocesan youth network. To Blackburn, with all their work, particularly on the Anglo-Catholic side, in the estates, which has led to Philip North now leading the National Estates Initiative. To Newcastle, where we worked with students. To Sheffield, working in Goole with the Centenary Project in an area of great deprivation, where the people simply don't want to come into church because that's the place they go to for funerals, and they find it very forbidding, and so they've created this wonderful church cafe and also services in the pub. And take Jesus to where he needs to be. It's about us understanding that while we may think the walls of this wonderful building are warm and welcoming, to others they're keep out signs. Through to Coventry, I could talk about with their work in 20s to 40-year-olds, the Ignite Cafes of Canterbury, working again in areas of deprivation. Ports, well, there's numerous places, of course, Portsmouth, Chichester and so on, that have created resource churches like this one. St. Peter's Brighton, now on to their 5th plant, I think. We went there into a church that had less than 50 parishioners, and by the time we went 3 years later, 1,500 people. Only in Brighton did we ever get to the point, shortly before COVID, where they took over a nightclub so that 1,000 youngsters could get together and have a night of Christian music. And now the SDF is funding a project which is about immersing Brighton, where the aim is that more churches in Brighton of all sorts of churchmanship will work together in collaboration to bring Jesus to be a universal offering of equal quality and access across the city. And I could talk about London with the projects they've had in various ethnic groups and geographies. Just the one that's recently been approved in Worcester, which is about really helping us restore our presence in Dudley, as they previously did in Telford, Newtown and Lichfield, places where we had become absent. Gateshead, another town in which we've become absent, where people from Sheffield have gone up and started a church up there. 12 families going up there to start a new church because we realized, or they realized, not us, they realized that nothing would happen without that. Now, COVID clearly hit things, and there are many projects which are running late and have had to be revised, but you can still see that bonfires have been lit across the country. Let's celebrate it. And one of my frustrations is not enough people know about all this, when actually there's a whole lot of material there that you can access and see the good news stories of Christ at work all across the country. But now we move on. Actually, of the 226 million, over 100 million remains to be spent, and that will be an important piece of work for my successor and the new Strategic Ministry and Mission Investment Board. We used to just have the Strategy Investment Board, but why have a 3-letter acronym when a 5-letter one will do? Actually, we've got this idea of trying to rename it SMILE. We came up with this on Thursday in the margins of the Interdiocesan Finance Forum. Strategic Ministry Investment for Leadership and Enterprise, SMILE. Well, we'll try that out on the archbishops, but you know what they're like if they don't think of it themselves. But there we go. So we've now got the new vision strategy piece that I won't go on about because you must have debated it endlessly. It's been much debated in General Synod, led very much by the Archbishop of York, but only led by him. And with a very clear focus, a younger, simpler, humbler church, a bolder church, bolder. Because actually when we undertook an independent review of SDF last year, the view was we had not taken enough risk. Risk is good. I obviously I'd much rather go 120 miles an hour upside down at Alton Towers than go at 20 miles an hour on the Big Dipper at Skegness. Unfortunately, the Skegness Big Dipper is closed now, so the story's gone, but you get the point. If you manage your risks well, you can take greater risks. And we spoke with the church commissioners and demonstrated to them why they could afford to release far more money into the church. And so, as you will have heard, we have over 3 billion over the next decade, 1.2 billion, particularly on the Diocesan Investment Programme over the next 9 years. And this is your opportunity, because we're moving away from the projects, the focus, as many people would see it, on shiny new things, to working in fellowship with you on a relational basis so that we support you. Everybody in Church House is just there to serve you, not the other way around. so that we work with you to help you as you develop your thoughts on where you want the diocese to go. And yes, there will be a focus on young people because we know we've got to change the pattern. And the goal is to double or even triple the number of young people in the church over the next decade. And in the church, I mean in the worshipping communities, because it's got to be the church in the way they want to be. And if in Derby University, that means we're up in some halls or whatever, celebrating our Christianity, that's far more important than we insist they sit in the pews of this or that church. That means that we have something approaching 390 million to spend on this triennium, and that work is underway. There is the allocation still, the same amount for lower income communities, and that formula remains the same. It will need to be reviewed. And we're ensuring now that we're really insisting that where the money is released into dioceses for that, there has got to be a visibility and a transparency that the money truly is being spent in the areas of deprivation. But the doors are then open for two things. One, the Diocesan Investment Programme. You should have now, I trust you have, Libby, a consultant working with you who is there to be your helping hand, and we are also providing capacity funding so that you have the resource you need to develop your thoughts on what you want this diocese to be taking on, maybe leading from the work here in St Margaret's, where I know there's plants underway. Thinking particularly about how you engage with your schools, with the universities, as you clearly are, how you create the offerings for young people to come, how you manage that big challenge of rural parishes, which is still such a big piece. And then there's a specific piece of money for people and partnerships, and this is really for more national or regional investments in infrastructures that might be needed. And it's not for me to say what they should be, but they may include, for instance, more initiatives about a strategic approach to developing the lay leadership of the future and the lay ministers. How we remove the barriers to people who might want to become youth leaders and ministers, but who perceive that all they are offered is the chance to have a job for 3 years. There's no career structure after that. There's no mentoring. There's no sense of fellowship as being one of a crowd who work together. Chaplaincy in all its forms. I remember a few years ago, I went to speak to the naval chaplains down at Portsmouth. It was a fabulous dinner. It was really great fun. And we were talking to them and listening to them. And this chap said, you know, I'm just finishing 5 years being the chaplain on a nuclear submarine. Over that time, I've dealt with many crew. There's 160 people on our submarine at any one time. I know them all. I have brought a fifth of them to baptism or confirmation. I have managed, when we've been going into port, the day when they are called into the captain's office, there is news to receive. It's usually bad, the breakdown of a relationship, the death of a parent, the loss of a child, or whatever. And my diocese do not want me. And we've got to stop this separation and isolation of chaplains in all their roles, be it hospitals, prisons, schools, the forces, or wherever. Because collaboration has to be at the key of this. We had an acronym we talked about earlier this week, and many of the, do you know, they ask you to be finance chairman of the Archbishop's Council. You find you're serving on 14 boards, by the way. So I'm quite looking forward to rediscovering Yvonne again, I think, at the end of this. Collaboration, urgency, risk, and evidence. They spell cure. Collaboration, working with others, be it centrally or regionally, with other dioceses who have similar issues. And Libby was telling me about the M1 corridor earlier. Absolutely. Urgency, it is increasingly urgent. Let's be very clear, COVID has dealt us a heavy blow. It is very clear that we have lost a lot of our older people. We've lost some people of all ages who have simply got out of the habit of coming to church, who have fallen away from their worship communities, and we must reach out to them. And I can see that in the numbers across the whole church for those people who are active worshippers and those people who have converted that worshipping into regular giving. And I know that you're facing deficits here, as is every diocese virtually across the country. Risk. Failure does not matter if it has been done for the right reason, that we've deliberately done something we know may not work, but we're going to try it, because if it does work, the payoff is tremendous. What matters is that we learn from it. And evidence, I just say to you, there are wonderful stories all over the church, of which, of course, this is just one, with its new planting going on. Let's learn from each other. How much quicker it is to be able to invest wisely if you base your work on the evidence of what others have achieved. Working from the evidence that exists in all so many different places will help you bring together different bits of best practice as you develop the bold, simple, humble, courageous plans which will embrace the youth and all parts of the communities that you serve in this wonderful county of Derby and slightly beyond. I've never believed that being blind should stop you doing things. And so I joined the Chelmsford Flying Club, where I met a man who was not only blind but half deaf and who's been a parachutist. I've never had regrets about being blindness. I've met some wonderful people, and it's a price well worth paying to ensure I never have an argument with Yvonne about who drives home after a party. Well, not unless I'm really tiddly, of course, but there we go. And I met this man who was blind to half deaf. He was a parachutist, and I went up to him and said, "Hey, Jim," or rather I shouted, "Hey, Jim," I said, "how is it you can be blind to half deaf and be a parachutist?" Johnny said, "It's really quite simple. I stand in my house and my friends come for me in their car. They take me down the garden path, they strap me in, and I know when the car has started because it begins to vibrate. They take me to the runway, the airport, they take me across the runway, and I reach the plane. I know when to reach the plane because I dent the side of it with my knee. They put me in, they strap me in, it goes down the runway, it takes off, it climbs to 10,000 feet, and I know when it's reached 10,000 feet because they open the hatch and there it goes whoosh, and they put one thumb there and tell me it's my parachute. And they put one thumb there and tell me it's my emergency parachute, and they throw me out of the plane and count to 10 slowly. 1, 2, 3, up to 10 I count, which was a rather slower progression than France against England last week, but there we are. And I pull my thumb there, the parachute opens, and I float so safely down to the ground. And if nothing happens, I pull my thumb there, the emergency parachute opens. Again, I float safely down to the ground, and Johnny said, "It really is the most wonderful feeling, Jim," I shouted. "That is truly remarkable." "But surely," I said, "the most difficult part. How on earth can you tell when you're nearing the land?" Johnny said, "That's not the most difficult part, that's the easiest. That is when the lead on the guide dog goes slack." We are not jumping out of a plane with an unknown parachute. We are progressing on our Christian journey humbly. I'm not quite sure where the road will take us. But we can do it with the confidence we heard about earlier. Because we do have each other, the church family that was mentioned before. The confidence in each other, the confidence in the competence we have, the confidence in what we have done before. And I will love it, and my successors will love it, when we see wonderful ideas coming forward from dioceses like Derby about where you want to take the Church of Christ in this county in the years to come. Where you want to invest to give yourselves the ability to reach all parts of your population, urban and rural. How you want to revitalize the parishes that need it, while at the same time growing massively among the young people who will be our future. Where you show that leading on generosity as a mark of mission, to ensure that you yourselves are growing the funds that you will need to complement those from the centre. that you are thinking about how you overcome that real challenge of getting young people to give with the ongoing commitment that older people used to, but they're dying out. Where you can say to those in Church House, thank you for serving us well in creating this programme. This is the Derby programme. And I will never rest, whatever role I may be in or none, as we carry on our job, which is surely the goal of us all, to ensure that Christ is at the centre of every community, its conscience and its culture. I'll be very happy to answer questions, but God bless you all. Have a wonderful time. Take care, everyone.